Welcome everyone to the Adversity to Advantage podcast. I'm very excited today. We've got Danielle Mensah. She is the founder of Qidanchi. It's a business focused on helping leaders live a life that they love, and she helps create businesses that make companies places where people really love to work. Welcome to the show, Danielle.
Hey Petra, thank you. It's great to be here. Lovely to see you.
Lovely to see you. So we've known each other for a couple of years just through networking events or leadership events. So I'm so excited to finally kind of have your story of how you got here onto the podcast. So fill in the blanks for our listeners. What are some of the things that you're most passionate about at the moment in work or in life?
Yeah, my passion is really about people and helping people become everything that they can be. We're beautiful, natural, innocent, creative forces when we appear on Earth, and then all this stuff goes on in our lives and
right.
kind of starts to hold us back. And so, what I want to do in my life, I've done it with myself, and what I'm really channeling into my work with individuals, whether they're in a company or it's more private with them, is just helping them release all of the stuff that's kind of getting in the way, and really understanding how to nourish yourself. Whether that's eating the right foods, getting the right amount of sleep, the way you think, the way you understand thought, how you kind of get yourself into recognizing that you're fully autonomous in your own bubble that you live in, and taking real pleasure in the autonomy that you have over yourself. So it's really just about people and being free and being creative and being the natural force that everyone could be.
I love that. I love the autonomy thing, because I feel like I've been doing amazing work, as in really exciting work, and underneath that maybe letting myself down or feeling I've had less choice in how I look after my body and my mind, which is ironic given that I'm a mental health consultant, but realizing what the choices are that we do have. So I've taken 2 episodes ago, we interviewed a guy called Harry Kalimnios. I've had his shake today, which is just actually making me buzz. I'm just like buzzed. He was all from the physical health aspect. So as you know, the theme of this podcast is around adversity, rock bottoms, resilience, and I'm always curious about people's sort of formative years. So what was it like growing up? Do you think your parents kind of set you up for the real world?
Oh, wow, what a question. Yes, I really think they did. I have 2 very loving parents. One passed away many years ago. My mother's still around. She's an awesome woman. But I was definitely shown what really goes on in the world, as much as you can be living in a kind of Western society. So we had lots of amazing things happening. I grew up on a farm. We had so much freedom. Now I live kind of on the suburbs of a big city, London, but back then we were in kind of greenery, loads of animals all the time, and it was just a very kind of easy, simple way of life in terms of how I started out. And then, as does happen in a lot of people's lives, although some people say my level of family dysfunction is slightly beyond the average.
So is mine.
Well, the average, but So then stuff kind of went on, and so as a person, I had in some ways a very strong foundation, but in others, I think a lot of messages kind of coming into me that meant I felt quite low in myself, didn't have a great deal of self-esteem, didn't feel particularly confident, and really, as I was in my kind of teen years, was struggling to get to grips with how I was going to live a life that I would enjoy. And I can obviously get into more specifics about what was going on and how that was affecting me. But I'm not sure if you want to ask more questions or just go there.
Yeah. Well, let's go there. So of course, I'm curious, as you know, about those rock bottom moments or the things that sort of form us and create the person that we are today, knowing very full well that it's usually like that, and then a couple crashes, and also that the industry that you worked in was very different from some of the stuff that you're doing now. But let's go there. How was it as a teenager? Sort of how challenging did it get for you?
Yeah. So my parents, both very smart, strong, caring, loving people. But they divorced when I was around 8, 9, and I was boarding at the time, so I was kind of away for a few years, although, back every weekend or so. But there was just general sense of kind of disconnection. And then when I was around 12, my mum started to see someone who she just fell madly in love with, and then they decided, they would get together, and so he left his previous family, and we kind of moved in with him, which was a little bit disruptive for kind of everyone involved in that. Then they decided they were going to break up because he wanted to go back, and so my mum and I disappeared off to New Zealand, and we spent several months travelling around New Zealand when I was 13, which was an incredible travelling experience, amazing. But we came back. I didn't want to be away from my brother and my father. And then she got back together with this guy, and so the three of us lived together for several years. And unfortunately for him, first and foremost, he was still very much struggling to deal with stuff that had gone on in his life. They were both incredibly heavy drinkers, and they would end up fighting. And he would get incredibly aggressive and at times violent towards my mother. And he was very irritable, and as a result of that kind of aggression and that kind of anger that was really strong, kind of raging in him like a fire, he was in effect emotionally abusive. Because it was such a kind of fearful, difficult, high-stress environment for me to grow up in. And as I briefly mentioned, my brother wasn't living with us, so I was the only other person in that household. Alongside...
Yeah,
Adam?
It's just a lot to hold on to with a young sort of forming brain trying to figure things out.
Yeah, totally, exactly. And that's it. Alongside, you kind of hitting puberty, you're at school, there's all the kind of playground stuff going on. There's all the sort of normal stuff and hormones starting to shift and all of that, but a very kind of difficult family environment in terms of where I lived. And then on my dad's side, he partnered up around the same time with a woman who was manic depressive. They had a child, and she suffered really severe postnatal depression. And so there was kind of two very gloomy households, which I would sort of flip between. And it was tough. It wasn't all bad. There was still, some fun, and there was some love and all of that. But nonetheless, an environment where I was in a fairly, permanent state of fear. And kind of walking on eggshells, always trying to do the right thing. And so I internalized a lot of that.
Because I was wondering if there was anyone you could speak to, or like...
I think, I maybe spoke to like a best mate when I was around 17, but it was so shrouded in secrecy, it was such a cover-up operation. One of the worst was, my mum kind of beaten black and blue, going to see her in the morning, her eyes kind of bulging out like that, going to have a shower to get ready to go to college, and the bathroom door was on the floor, and I'm like, why? Oh, okay, because you managed to knock through that to get to my mum where she was hiding. Stuff like that, really kind of horrific experience. And I think I was around the age of sort of 14, 15, and unfortunately picked up the idea from a friend at school, which is so sad. And she was going through her own kind of stuff, that you can self-harm. And so I started to kind of scratch my arms, and then eventually take a knife to my arms. And I've got some, pretty full-on scars as a result of that. You don't really notice them so much now, but back then they were extremely visible. So I would spend summers wearing kind of long-sleeve tops. It didn't matter what the weather was. I was hiding, and in effect, I was hiding. There was so much going on inside, and so much going on in that family home that just couldn't be spoken about. And one of my rock bottom moments was after my parents had unfortunately found me at some point with my sleeves rolled up, because it was a hot day, and they'd seen my arms. That they'd come back from a walk unexpectedly, and they saw it. Okay, drama ensued. So they kind of knew what was going on, and they were trying to work out how to support me through that. And then, one evening something bad had gone on, and I'd gone into my room, and I'd taken the carving knife, and I was holding it against my neck. I was in such a state of distress. I was contemplating whether to cut a new area, shall we say, which could have had quite dramatic consequences. I didn't want to do that. And then in a way, I suppose I got lucky because suddenly I heard my parents were back in the house. I think they were trying to cook dinner and they were like, where's that knife?
Whoa.
And they came running down to my room and then, kind of grabbed me and were like, calm down. So it was really difficult because those two, they were loving people. Sure. Did I feel really loved at the time? Did I feel valued? No. There were so many conflicting messages. But of course, they were distraught. They were worried about me. And it wasn't hard for them to think that the environment that we were living in was having such a strong effect on me, as well as, the other stuff that goes on with a kid that's a teenager going through school, etc. So that was pretty horrendous. But I was fortunate to see a psychotherapist. I don't think I had that many sessions with her, but she helped me understand this break in the kind of causal link of how you're thinking and how you're feeling, and that nobody makes you feel something. You again, it goes back to that autonomy piece. So I was really fortunate at such a young, tender age to be, who was well trained and wise to help me understand that, and that helped with a lot of kind of family relationships for sure. But unfortunately, we couldn't really finish off that work because then I escaped, and it really did feel like an escape to university. And I was lucky to get there because I remember going to an exam. I did business studies, and we had some horrific fight in the morning. And then my stepdad drove me to college, and I was just in tears. And then I had to walk into an exam room, pull myself together, and try and get through it. And it was the hardest piece of the business studies that I was doing. And funnily enough, I didn't get a good grade then, but it was modular, so I could retake it. And in the end, I came out with 3 A's from A-levels.
Oh my goodness. But I'm just wondering, so obviously there's a lot of misunderstandings around self-harm. And it's just worth noting for people listening, if they're unaware, like the purpose of it for someone, which really is around release, right? And not having a place to go with some horrific feelings, or like not having any maybe even understanding of what's going on in your mind, just feeling
Yeah, absolutely. You're completely spot on. Some people think of these sorts of, we call them coping mechanisms, self-harm, eating, all sorts of things that sometimes we start to do. And people think sometimes it's attention seeking, like crying out. Self-harm is, in my experience of it, the opposite. I did not want anyone to know. It was a release.
Yeah.
And watching, this sounds pretty horrific, but watching blood drip out of my arms, it's quite emotional actually, was literally like the emotion and the torment that I was feeling inside coming out. So it was like a method to do that. And the reason I started doing it, as I said, was because a friend at school was doing it in a much more severe way, and I literally thought, that's how I get this out. That's how I can do it. And now, of course, I know so many more techniques, and so, I'm so enriched in the way I understand us human beings, to be able to express feelings, to understand my needs, and to understand how to request that I want those needs to be met, first and foremost by myself, go back to what you said at the start, but also by, my support network, my kind of dream team, my hubby, my best mates, my mum, etc. To any parent whose child is self-harming, to anyone that is self-harming, there are other ways, and it's so important to first acknowledge what you're feeling, and to then ask for support.
So that is the hardest thing.
And it is really hard because
there's so much shame.
And you're often afraid. You think something awful is going to happen if you reach out, whereas I would say it's the opposite. Once you start to share what you're experiencing, you often realise that a lot of people are actually aware. I had some amazing teachers at the college I was at who clearly had picked up on the fact something was going on. It wasn't as well hidden as I thought it was, funnily enough. And there is so much more support. And now, obviously, we're how many decades on?
Just a couple.
Yeah, and there's incredible charity organisations. There's much more awareness of all of this stuff, but unfortunately, with self-harm, it's becoming way more common. And what I would love is to see the curriculum at schools amended such that there was education around how to recognise emotions, how to recognise your needs, and how to communicate around them. And there's amazing, quite simple techniques to that, which every teacher should know. and then we could literally change the world by helping people in that way.
And then from a professional sort of therapist perspective, it isn't so much just, for people talking so much about the self-harm unless it's appropriate, but it's providing space to talk about all of the other stuff, the built up feelings and thoughts and emotions that are actually affecting you.
Yeah, because I think what happens is we try to pretend we're not feeling what we're feeling, because from a very young age, almost from birth, we're conditioned to shut down our feelings. From the very little, when a baby cries, we say shush, 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 it's okay.
Yeah.
Fundamental denial of how that baby is expressing emotion and how they're feeling. So it starts at a very young age.
Yeah.
You add general kind of society conditioning, and then add on top of that perhaps some very difficult traumatic experiences. And what we tend to try to do is pretend that we're okay, not talk about it, not let ourselves even be aware that it's happening, and kind of put it in a little box with a lid that's welded shut.
Except it isn't.
and it isn't, and it doesn't work like that. And the emotion is carried in our body, and it stays in our body until we release it. And there's again several different amazing ways that you can get this stuff out. The first thing is allowing yourself to recognize that there's stuff there, and then working out how you can get it out.
Absolutely. And so I know that. Go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say. And the more natural we are at doing that, you won't get anywhere near thinking that you want to or need to self-harm. Think of what self-harm is. Yes, there's self-harm cutting yourself, but there's self-harm, not eating correctly. There's self-harm not getting enough sleep.
Yeah.
Lighter touch, if you will, self-harm. There's all sorts of different ways that we don't take care of ourselves. And in a way, it all starts with not allowing yourself to be a naturally expressive being that's full of a whole range of emotion. And the more easy you are and the more you just let it flow like a river through you, the less you hold on to, just the easier and simpler your life is.
And so I know you've had a couple decades now of learning these things slowly over time. So what are the new coping mechanisms? Who are your group of people, your support network that allows you to work in the amazing way that you do, to create impact, to be a parent, to look after yourself in so many ways? Talk us through any other sort of rock bottoms or crisis points that you've experienced, and then we'll move into, what are the things that you learned? What were the practical steps that maybe you even incorporate now?
Yeah, sure. So another rock bottom moment happened at university. So I'd got there, I'd stopped self-harming in terms of cutting my arms. The psychotherapist I worked with, it just clicked, and I was like, yeah, done with that. Lovely. But I was a heavy drinker.
Yeah.
That's extremely encouraged at university. I dabbled with drugs, from the age of around 16, I think, and I dabbled here and there while at uni. And in this particular year, I think it was my 4th year, I hadn't done a great deal of work, in a way, in my first 3 years at university in terms of studying.
Yeah.
I socialized a lot. I, built some great friendships in a way. But because I still had so much kind of crap going on in me, it was quite tough for me to be just a kind of calm, level-headed, stable person, I think.
You're escaping still, aren't you?
Yeah, absolutely. And I got into this habit of going out with some mates, having a good evening, and then I would carry on to another nightclub and take loads of drugs on my own, with some fairly random people that were there. And then I would get home at whatever time, and I probably hadn't slept the entire night, and then I was supposed to go to, work. And I just remember coming home, and I was probably on, what people typically refer to as a come down. But add on top of that all the other stuff that I kind of just hadn't dealt with, hadn't released. And I remember calling the Samaritans.
Wow, yeah.
Just being like, hey, I feel really shit, and I don't really know what to do about it. And of course, they were very supportive and huge empathy across the phone. But it was one of those moments where I thought, I'm really starting to struggle. And I've got myself into some difficult eating habits. So I used to massively binge eat and just kind of go through an enormous amount of food, and then desperately try and recover from that by massively under eating.
Mm.
And so this rock bottom moment was a catalyst for me to go, okay, I can't carry on like this. I only have so many more months left to complete my degree, and I want to come out with a 2-1. That was my mission.
Yeah. Okay.
And I do not want this to go wrong, and I don't want to feel the way I feel. So I had to get myself out of that, and it really was a moment where, as my mum reminded me the other day, I had to consider, do I drop out of university? Do I need to go into a kind of just recover
in order to recover? Yeah.
Yeah, and so we talked, and she actually came up to see me at university and gave me support and love, which I really desperately craved, and then we decided that I would stop the part-time job that I was doing for a few months, just so that I had a bit more time to get through my exams. I was still kind of a bit all over the place in terms of eating, but I managed to come out with my 2-1, hurrah! And so university and degree was done, and then I moved to London, and then got into a whole different kind of way of life with different friendships, different kind of environment, and just started to grow in confidence, while still having a long way to go in really becoming resourceful in how to take great care of myself. I realised that this kind of trap I was in of heavy binge eating, heavy under eating, was just a vicious cycle, which was perpetual until I broke it. So I did at university, I think, have a counsellor to help with the eating, and I was so disappointed when I spoke to a doctor. They couldn't even label the disorder. It was sufficiently erratic to be disordered eating, but couldn't fit neatly into a label. So I was like, I don't even have an identity as a kind of disordered eating person. Yeah, exactly. So then I moved to London, and things got a lot better.
You started moving forward. So you're obviously saying things like you saw a counselor for a bit, there was a psychotherapist before. What else shifted, just as far as your habits, maybe the people you hung out with? You said your confidence was building. What were the key things that maybe supported that? Was it just time? Was it new environments? But you'd been to a new environment before, and it had just spiraled and gotten more extreme. So what helped you balance out some of the behaviors?
I think it was kind of breaking free into a new environment that felt very much like it was my own thing to create. Nobody in my family ever really came to London.
Oh, right. Okay.
It's very much a kind of, this is me doing my thing. And I got myself a job at the London Stock Exchange, which was, in some ways quite remarkable.
Yeah.
I managed to get the top mark in the country doing my banking law in the final year of university. I think I felt confident that I'm smart, I'm fun. There's a lot of things that I can do in my life, and I want my life to be as good as it can be. And I think that early learning, as I mentioned from the first therapist, around I'm kind of in charge. So that gave me this early sort of seed of confidence of, actually, this is my life to create. And so, I started working, I started making friends. I lived with 2 lovely people who were from university but not close mates. And that, I think, was great for me because it was just a very, very easy, settled, safe home. Really my first of that. That was a great kind of base to operate from. I think in some ways it was sort of unfortunate that I picked finance as a career, because drinking was and is so incredibly encouraged. But at the same time, I really fit in.
Yeah.
And people say, how do you kind of thrive in a male-dominated environment? And it wasn't so much that I was one of the lads, I had to operate like a man in the workplace. But I was totally at ease with going out boozing and being full of banter and, having a good laugh and building relationships in that way. And that was part of it. We were a social bunch. There was a lot of young guys and girls at that company who I got to know and befriend. So I think through that came a strong sense of camaraderie, support. We're in this together. The job was interesting. It was different. Yes, there was an element of stress to that because I was outside my comfort zone. But in the early roles that I did there, I was quite quickly able to demonstrate that I could perform very well. And so, that was sort of running along quite nicely, if you will.
Amazing. And so obviously now you're working for yourself. You continue to create the life that you want in more ways than one with your own business. And of course, as a parent, what allowed you just to transition into that? Was it just going, well, I've done what I need to in the finance industry, it's time to move forward? Kind of what was that transition like?
I'd always known, really, that my purpose was to work with people.
Okay.
And, I'd entered finance and I loved it. And of course, that is working with people because, business is all about human interaction and interpersonal relationships, right? No matter how much technology takes over, that's what it is. So I enjoyed it because of that. But the financial products per se just didn't float my boat. I'm not somebody who gets really excited by man-made things. I'm very much about human nature. And so for me to work in the way that I do now, which is really around how do you help people thrive in all the different ways, right? Physical, mental, emotional, kind of purpose, meaning, all those different levels that are within us. That is deep inside me. What I want to do, what I'm best at, and what I think the world really needs. So recognizing that probably 4 or 5 years ago, ironically, just as I was taking on my biggest job ever in finance, I started the transition. I did my coach training, I attended different events, I networked with different groups of people that are kind of more in this field, like your lovely self, and started to kind of dip my toes into an alternative way of being and working. And so when I actually launched Qidanchi this year, it isn't really a sudden new thing, because it's been such a lovely gradual transition. And really, since I was a teen, it's been in me that this is the work that I want to do.
That's amazing.
So this feels to me like I'm now on career plan A.
And so do you think the adversity that you faced in your life was necessary or has prepared you in some way for the type of work that you do now?
Absolutely. And, people hear this and think, what? Because I see it as a gift. I really believe in life happens for you, not to you. And so the difficult experiences that you go through, whatever they may be, are moments where you can really be awakened and you can learn a lot. Like when I understand so much about empathy and forgiveness and hardship and, effectively the kind of ancestry line of what we go through as human beings and how that influences us in our kind of current life that we're leading, I wouldn't have anywhere near the grasp of that or the appreciation or the fullness of understanding if I hadn't experienced what I have. So I'm a long way out of the, poor me, these things happened to me, why? And I'm, far into, wow, this stuff happened. It was really, really tough. Some of the ways I dealt with it at the time were also really tough.
Yeah.
I'm so glad that now I understand how to, handle stuff differently so that life can be easier. And hence why I'm so motivated to help other people learn that and discover that, because then you don't have to necessarily go through the kind of 10 years of crap that I took myself through, because you can learn it quicker and then you're able to recover.
Well, you can, but sometimes we don't. Sometimes we don't want to listen until we're at the rock bottom and completely ready.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's such a good point. It isn't kind of a magical thing. Oh, that's tough. Hey, I'll just do these little techniques and I'm fine now. It's sometimes a really gradual process. It's rare that people kind of flick a switch and overnight they're okay. It is about kind of embedding that experience, and then you hit a point where you're like, actually, I can let that go now and move on into different things.
It's a process. And so now in this present day, do you have any kind of habits or routines that you try and consistently put in place in order to sustain this level of success and productivity and well-being and all those sorts of things for you?
Yeah, I think the most important thing is my perspective in terms of thought and being able to catch very quickly when my thought is heading into a kind of downward spiral negative process. And I can literally just observe that and then, say to myself, you don't need to pay attention to that. It doesn't really matter why that's happening. It could just be that I'm really tired, or it could be that something's gone on that's a bit of a trigger for me, whatever. I am happier and in a higher energy state when I am not overthinking and not going into analysis mode. And I used to think being really analytical was like the most amazing thing, and it meant I was really smart. Yeah. I now realise, actually, and having the benefit of a husband and a best mate who are just really peaceful, easy, content characters, and they don't, kind of think all the time about all sorts of stuff. Like, yeah, that is the way. So that would be my number one thing. Just spot when your thought is veering off. Yeah. Notice. Say to yourself, I don't need to pay attention to that, because you'll be amazed how magically nothing changes, but you'll just be thinking differently and feeling differently.
Which shows what we have in control again. So it might seem like there's chaos around us, but we have control over our thoughts, our mind, and how we approach things and react to them.
Exactly, and that is, that's my absolute number one thing, because I think there's a lot of people I'm aware of who are really thinking they need to make massive life changes, huge career transition, they're going to have to move to a different country, they're going to have to break off with a family member, whatever it may be. And sometimes those things are the right thing. Sometimes you just need to try that out and see how that is. Totally support that. But often I think there's a fundamental shift in perspective, which is that you can become aware of what I just said around thought, not paying attention to it. Nothing else has to change.
Yeah. And
suddenly you feel better.
The whole world can look different.
Absolutely. So that was really important. Then there's other techniques, for example, having kind of morning rituals, bedtime rituals, and that stuff that I kind of evolve over time. And sometimes I really kind of do that quite regularly. And it might consist of breathing exercises, listening to some of my kind of favorite tunes, because music really hits you at a kind of cellular level, so that's kind of wonderful. And my son starts bopping around dancing, and I like dancing, so there's good body movement with that. Bedtime, it might be do a little bit of Tai Chi, dim the lights, get kind of prepared for sleep. And I kind of laugh about it, having had a child only last year, and all that you go through to kind of help them sleep. It's like, yeah, we need to do the same. We've kind of forgotten that. We think we can be on the emails, on the iPad, watching TV, bright lights, all this kind of stuff, and then just like magic, it's ready to shut down and then sleep perfectly. So that's things. And then if I'm preparing for stuff that's potentially stressful, I absolutely still get nervous and ahead of events, and can get jittery about stuff I'm going to do in my work life, and that kind of thing. I think that's perfectly normal.
I like that you said that. That's so cool to hear, because it's just because I've spoken in front of lots of people doesn't mean I don't need to do some steps before to get in the zone. So
absolutely. I love speaking in front of people. It's like magic when you do that, and you're able to kind of inspire someone. They come up to you and they say, "Oh wow, that was amazing to hear." It doesn't mean that I immediately stand there and I'm like, hey, still got this. Yeah. So I'm trying out the Tony Robbins incantations at the moment, which is all about your physiology and saying these wonderful statements that kind of just pour into your body. So I'm trying that out. But in terms of what I do to prepare, I find it really powerful to speak to the mirror. It's like it creates a kind of imprint in your brain. And you kind of see how you are, and you're able to kind of take on the fullness of the message that you want to communicate in whatever you're doing.
What kind
So
of
whether it's
stuff might you say?
a meeting, or you're doing a big talk, or you're just going to go and do something that you're feeling a little bit like, ah. You can just do some breathing exercises. Breathing's amazing and like the thing to calm you down. And then you can say these wonderful, kind of powerful, empowering statements and really own it in your body.
Do you need to believe the statements in order? Because people are often like, what kind of things do I say? What if I don't believe it yet? Or what do you think?
I think you can have a mix of what you really, really believe and aspirations in there. So long as it feels real enough to you that it is something you can start to let wash into you. Because the idea of it is that the more you say it, the more real it becomes. But you're absolutely spot on. Belief is incredibly influential, and so it wouldn't work if you wrote a load of stuff that it just felt like you were saying something about someone else, and that your body was just going, nah, this ain't true. So if there's something that you really want to believe about yourself but you don't, I'd say there's a different exercise to do where you could just take that and you could look at what's coming up. Is there a fear in there alongside this kind of exciting statement you want to make about yourself? Delve into both, suss out the feelings, name the feelings, kind of process work around it, which I'm guessing is what you would do with some of your clients, and seek to kind of compile that out and release that, and get back to the right. Okay, what do I, who am I? What do I want to embody? And it's very, very helpful to self-check. How much am I connecting with this? How true does this seem to me, both in terms of who I am right now and the me that I want to let out? So it's slightly different, a bit of a reframe. It's not the who I want to become, it's who you are deep inside and allowing that out.
Yeah, because I've got evidence that I do well in public speaking. So I've got the evidence, but then I feel nervous and like, oh, fuck, this is going to be the one that I fuck up, right? So in doing that kind of mirror work or the Wonder Woman pose or whatever, it's just kind of reminding myself that I don't need to be in fight or flight, that I've been in this situation before and so it's accessing that resource.
Yeah, totally. And I think sometimes we forget that we are primal. And, we are constantly checking for survival risk.
Danger, yeah.
And so you go and stand up in front of a large group of people, and it doesn't, to me, matter how big that group is. There is a group, and you may or may not know them, but the way you're probably thinking about it is starting to trigger, this is the equivalent of a lion coming through a bush and is about to jump out and attack me. Yeah. Fight or flight, you start to sweat because your body heats up as you get stressed.
Your mouth goes dry. Yeah.
You just have a real challenge with blushing. That's all linked to this fight or flight state happening. And so those little techniques are exactly what you said, just ways to switch yourself out of what is the sympathetic state, which is when you're stressed and stimulated, fight or flight, into the parasympathetic, which is when you're relaxed. And when you're in that relaxed state, you are able to kind of draw on your natural resources and all your creative juices flow out much more easily. And it's just a kind of happier, more flowing place to be. That said, public speaking, a little bit of adrenaline pumping is, it's a helpful thing. And it isn't about kind of just bobbling along like it's just some little relaxed beam. It's about balance, it's about moderation, it's about knowing how to switch yourself from sympathetic into parasympathetic, i.e. stimulated to relaxed, stressed to calm. And that is, a significant amount of what I focus on with my clients, because this is one of the key issues that people are facing. We're like constantly stimulated and stressed and have lost the innate understanding of how to come out of that. So I do things like that to help. In certain situations.
There's something around just the self-awareness, the experiences that you've had, pulling it together, experimenting. I would say there's a portion of experimenting to see what well-being tips and tricks work for you and what you want to incorporate in different habits and routines, but also giving us space to evolve. So as a parent, you have new challenges that you would, need to in business, as I know myself, there's new challenges with isolation and having to rely on yourself. There's so many different ways, but we can adapt. I feel like I'm going to have you on again one day, just as our businesses develop and we talk more about workplace well-being and how we sustain our own well-being with new challenges. But for the sake of time, yeah, it would be great. There's also something around parenting, and like, if we believe that adversity is good, do we also believe that our kids should experience adversity when we have the primal protective thing, though?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, again, you can go down a wrong path of thinking I need to wrap my kid in kind of cotton wool, and in fact, ideally put them in a room that's padded.
Yeah.
And nothing ever happens to them. That is not the correct approach.
The worst
There's a
thing you could do.
wonderful book, The Magical Child, and I'm so glad I read it. And it was my stepfather that suggested I read it, and it had a profound shift for me in how I really understand children. And in that book, and I think a couple of others that I read as well, it does talk about being balanced and experiencing adversity and stress and relaxation. And it is just this kind of flow that ought to be happening. It's not about, switching off stress altogether and avoiding it. It's knowing how to kind of be in that flow and how to be resilient to it. And kids are a great example of that. All of a sudden they will flip out, the tears are there in a nanosecond. They're kind of screaming, they're upset, and then, 2 seconds later, they're laughing. And there's a wonderful, real example of expressing emotion in the moment and just rolling with it, right? Because at this point in time, I don't think my son has been conditioned to quell his emotion. He just did it. Fantastic. And we'll see how we get on through the years.
Of course.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It is not about avoiding adversity. Of course, I'd rather that he didn't experience a really kind of high violence,
trauma,
fearful home environment.
No.
I don't want him to have to go through that.
No.
But will he experience adversity as he goes out into his life? Some people joke about if they can survive the playground these days, they can survive anything.
Well, and the online world these days.
Yeah, absolutely. So, becoming a parent is a magical experience, and I have loved discovering what it's like, having this little person to take care of. And if there's ever a moment, and there are moments, of course, where I kind of go, we need to get out of the house, and he's decided to throw something, create a load of mess, and except he doesn't know any of those things. He's not meaning to do anything that's wrong. He's just experimenting and curious and all the rest of it. And I might think, wow, you'll leave. I think, self-manage.
Choices even then?
Yeah. Does it always work?
No.
Of course not, because I'm a normal human being, right? I'm not much my disappointment as a perfectionist, Miss Perfect. But again, it's the little techniques, isn't it? And the other thing I would say as well, I just want to come back to this because you did mention it, I think, part of your question earlier on, is I'm not on my own. I have a caring family that aren't close by, but I get to have calls with, visit. I have an amazing, loving, nurturing, supportive husband. I've got incredible best mates, friends that live locally, mum-in-law that's 20 minutes down the road. I got really lucky in terms of help with childcare, but just kind of love pouring in that way. And I have a coach. I have someone who helps me in terms of overall health and well-being, and a program that I'm always kind of working on in terms of how I can fine-tune, I suppose, and improve my understanding. I'm continually doing courses and learning because I just don't think you ever stop.
Agreed.
There's so much new information coming out now, new discoveries around neuroscience and things. I'm at a neuroscience event on Thursday. There's just so much going on. And that's important because then it helps in terms of isolation of running your own business.
Absolutely.
I don't feel kind of on my own. I feel very connected into lots of different people and lots of different kind of networks and so on. But also I'm not on my own in terms of my self-care.
Yeah.
There is a, as I like to call them, dream team of people around me who help me in different ways.
which is an amazing thing to build over time. Danielle, thank you so much for your time, your vulnerability. I appreciate it so much. If people want to connect with you in some way, where can they find you?
Best thing is probably email, so Danielle@Qidanchi, that's QIDANCHI.com, or look me up on LinkedIn, Danielle Mensah, and message me through that.
Perfect. We'll add that into the show notes, and hopefully we'll have you on again at some point. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thanks very much, Petra.